America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks for being here on the First TV. Our special today is called Who is Gavin Newsom? Why are we doing this? I think Gavin Newsom is going to be the Democratic nominee for president. This is no compliment to him. He's spending a ton of money. He's out there in front of the rest of the pack, whatever that pack is. But I just want to take some time here to make sure we all know who Gavin Newsom is so we don't let the devil get a foothold. I don't want him getting anywhere near the White House. Now, why do I think he's the front runner? Again, no compliment to him. Who's the bench? Who else you got? Who else? Who's if not him? Who? What are the Democratic frontrunners? Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, J.B. Pritzker. There's Pete Buttigieg. I thought when I saw that picture of Pete Buttigieg, I assumed he was eating ribs. He's eating a cinnamon bun. Who have you ever seen eat a cinnamon bun like that? And then the guy on the right, that's Wes Moore. He's the governor of Maryland. And just the other day, the Democratic Party gave him a chance to see what he can do on Face the Nation, gave him a little bit of spotlight. And it was about why he's against deploying the National Guard in his state to help fight crime in Baltimore. And it was just deer in the headlights for the whole 12 minutes. It was brutal. He's just not ready for prime time, as they say. Neither was Kamala. There were all these warnings from California about Kamala to Joe's team when he picked her. Remember, Joe said he's got to pick a black woman, so pretty limited his choices. So Kamala was there, and they're like, no, she's not ready for prime time. She's like a D2 college baseball player, and she's going to start for the Yankees now. Like, she's not ready. It's not going to go well. And it didn't. So the Democrats have no bench. So Gavin Newsom's the best they got. And he's a good talker. He's smarter than Kamala, right? But like Kamala, he suffers from being a Democrat in California, meaning they work their way up their entire career with zero opposition. They never get any tough questions from the media. They never have to be held responsible for anything. It's like always playing a home game with your own refs, to keep the sports analogy going. They've never faced opposition. That's one of the reasons why they're not ready for prime time. Remember when Newsom and DeSantis had their debate on Fox News a couple years ago? Newsom just didn't rise to the occasion. He didn't pull through because he's never had to debate before. I mean, think about that. He's the governor of the state. He's never had a debate. So Gavin's jumping into the fray early now, hoping to get in front of it all, amidst a party with a terrible, like record low approval rating. He's the best there is amongst a very demoralized party right now. And I know, like, Republicans, like, should we be happy that Newsom's running? Maybe. It'll be easy to characterize him as a caricature of all the failures of California, which have started in California and spread around the rest of the country. And we don't want a California America. Gosh, that's such an easy talking point to make against him. Just look at his record. Look at California. Even Frank Luntz, he wrote this the other day. He said, I like Gavin Newsom personally, and I was glad to go on his podcast earlier this year. Nevertheless, I don't think he can win a national election. And then he posted, he said a video montage of California's homeless problem would be electoral kryptonite. And here's the video that Frank Luntz posted.
Across the city, the tents stretch everywhere. From Hollywood to Venice Beach, scenes from what could be a disaster movie, now a seemingly permanent fixture on the streets of Los Angeles.
If you're not shocked by what you see, then I don't know what you would be shocked.
But Newsom's on it. When he was mayor of San Francisco, he announced a 10-year plan to end homelessness in San Francisco. A 10-year plan. That was 22 years ago. It's worse than ever. Now, here's what we got to be careful of, I guess. What does the 2028 campaign look like with Donald Trump? What's his role in this? We've got two assumptions. First assumption is he makes it that far. Who knows what happens in the next few years? And the other assumption is he doesn't run again. Okay, but putting those aside, what role does President Trump have in the campaign for, so let's just say J.D. Vance? What role does Trump play? If Trump is in the picture, Newsom has no chance. Trump so easily dismisses, the way Trump dismisses J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, he just kicked out of the family business. He's such a loser. He's such a failure. He was kicked out of the family business. And he was like, oh, Pritzker, you're done, man. And Trump has the same little that he does with Newsom. Here it is.
The governor's incompetent. You know, Gavin, I know Gavin very well. He's an incompetent guy with a good line of bullshit. And he doesn't get the job done.
That's it. Incompetent, good line of BS, doesn't get the job done. That's it. That's all you got to do. And Newsom next to that, powerhouse, the powerhouse that is Trump, he's got nothing. All right, total Bush League. And everyone will see it and just know it and feel it. To a point where I almost feel bad for Newsom. Like it's a whole, let's for 1 second, let's go down this road. Newsom's whole life plan, as we'll talk about later with some of our guests, his whole life plan was to be president of the United States. And he was put on third base. There's a famous picture of him with his then wife, Kimberly Guilfoyle. Newsom was the mayor. Yeah, Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco at the time. This was on the cover of Harper's Bazaar, or in Harper's Bazaar. He was on the cover, but I don't think this was the cover shot. But this was the main shot at Harper's Bazaar magazine. This picture, the head of Harper's Bazaar said that this picture made them look like Mark Antony and Cleopatra. He didn't tell any of his aides about this photo shoot when he did it. They were the new Kennedys, right? That was in Ann Getty's, multi-billionaire. That was in her house in San Francisco. He often talks about how he was raised by a single mom. His dad was the main lawyer and best friends with the main Getty heir, with the whole Getty family, the patriarch of Getty Oil. Gave Newsom, who was like a father figure to him, a ton of money to start his winery and all of his business ventures. Newsom's always been put right on third base, set up for success. And his whole life has been preparing to run for president. And life's all about timing. And the timing for Gavin is he's going to have to run in the midst of an ascendant Republican Party that finally has decided to play hardball when it comes to redistricting and the census and a bunch of other real issues. Like, we're actually going to fight crime now. And we're going to fight the Democratic Party and we're going to win. And Newsom is now walking into that. I kind of feel bad. Just a little bit I feel bad for him. And timing-wise, he's done here in 2026. And the election's 2028. So he's going to have 2 years with no real job. The plan was for Biden to be in the White House and then name Gavin Newsom after his term for governor is over, name him Secretary of State, or give him something that gives him international credibility. So then he can run from that to run to the White House. He has no platform, no springboard to jump out of into. He can't gain anything else. His only foreign leadership or foreign responsibility was when he meets with the president of China, which also happens to be the only time he ever cleans up San Francisco, is when she comes to town. But just imagine a J.D. Vance Newsom race. There's his best bud. She loves it. That's it. There's Newsom's foreign policy experience. There's a side-by-side picture of J.D. Vance and Gavin Newsom going around from when they were each in high school. It's Gavin on the right. I need to tell you. One of those two is connected to billionaire oil oligarchs. The other is the son of a drug-addicted mother in the Rust Belt who joined the Marines to pay for college and is now the vice president of the United States. Newsom's got nothing to run on. Democrats are in a real pickle. They've lost their base. So they need to get their base back. But the Democratic base is insane. Men and women's bathrooms, stuff like that. So they need to appeal to their base and also grow their party. How do you do that? And is Newsom the man to do that?
You have an incompetent governor there. You have an incompetent governor in California, Gavin. I know him very well. He's incompetent. He's a nice guy, looks good. Hi, everybody. How you doing? He's got some strange hand action going. I don't know what the hell his problem is. It's a little weird, to be honest. There's a little something shaky going on there. But, you know, all he has to do is call me and say, we have the Olympics coming up. We want to make it really good and safe.
Who is Gavin Newsom? I can't wait to get John Phillips' take on this. KABC radio in LA, host of the John Phillips Show. John, do you believe Gavin will be the Democratic nominee, and how far do you think he will go?
God, I hope not, although he's certainly the candidate the Democrats deserve. And I say that with complete sincerity. Gavin Newsom right now is leading in all of the national polls in the Democratic primary, in part because if you look at where the Democratic Party is right now, where Democratic voters are, when it comes to policy and personnel, they're very split. You asked the question, should biological men be able to play in women's sports? Well, that's an 80-20 issue nationally, but within the Democratic Party, they're split. You ask them what they think about Israel. Well, the country supports Israel over the Palestinians, but within the Democratic Party, they're split. When it came time to do something about Grampy Joe, the Democratic Party was split. Should they get rid of Chuck Schumer? They're split. The one thing that unites the moderates and the lefties in the Democratic Party right now is they have the hot, hot hate of 1,000 suns for Donald Trump. And Gavin Newsom recognizes this. And he was trying to paint himself as the guy who was the Democrat who could talk to MAGA. And he had Stephen Bannon on his show, and he had Michael Savage and Charlie Kirk and others. And the reaction he got from Democrats was swift and negative. And he quickly realized that to unite the party, all he has to do is be the one that hates Trump the most. And he reinvented himself, gave himself a personality transplant, and became the partisan warrior, the guy who just can't stop swearing about Donald Trump, the guy who just has to kick trash cans 24/7 because he hates Donald Trump so much. And right now, within that party of rage, he is the one that's bubbled up to the top. And I don't think he's going to quit doing what he's doing anytime soon, because at least in the short term, it's working for him. Whether or not it works for him in the long term, I'm not quite sure. Because if you're a Democrat running against Gavin Newsom in the primary, and you recognize how much your electorate hates Donald Trump, at a certain point, wouldn't you assume someone's going to say, you know, I'm a Democrat who thinks we should move on from Donald Trump. And right now, Gavin Newsom is trying to do his act. I think that's one of the arguments that'll be used against him, and I think it'll be quite effective.
Wow, very good. To that point, the communications team he hired to do all the imitation of Trump, what do you make of that?
Yeah, you look at Gavin Newsom in person, and he's this gentry class winemaker from San Francisco. You follow him on social media, and he's the ghost of Paul Lynde. It's like, you know, every single tweet is supposed to be a punchline at drag queen bingo. And you say to yourself, okay, well, this isn't something that is consistent with the person we know. And it's, again, just a move that he made, because if he just puts out nothing but rage on the internet and, you know, trolls Donald Trump 24/7 on Twitter or True Social or wherever, that will generate attention. And to Gavin's credit, there are a lot of Democratic voters out there that find it amusing right now. But it doesn't look presidential, and it's not presidential. And the Achilles heel of Gavin Newsom is that he is inauthentic and he is a flake. And he can troll Donald Trump all he wants. That's not going to negate the fact that this guy is in charge of a state that's a complete basket case. He makes these grandiose proclamations all of the time with zero follow through. And if you're a Democrat, why would you buy that as your nominee? Why would you say to yourself, okay, we have a guy whose record is awful, who would have a hard time explaining all of his failures in a general election. And you go back to 2024, which is when Donald Trump won his reelection or won his second term. And the problem for Democrats was they boxed themselves in. They made it so that they had a choice between two unelectable candidates. They rigged the primary for Grampy Joe. And then when Grampy Joe had that awful debate performance, they had no place to go but Kamala Harris. And she was just as unelectable as Grampy Joe. Well, if they're amused by Gavin's tweets and they indulge themselves by nominating a candidate who is unelectable, they're going to be in the same spot in 2028 that they were in 2024.
Yes. Okay. How does this, I don't know what words you want to use, the slickness, smoothness, whatever, of Gavin come across to people in the rest of the country, do you think? Is it charming or off-putting?
I would assume that it reinforces his inauthenticity, because there is nothing about that guy that is authentic. And you look at these swing states that'll decide the election. Let's start with Nevada and Arizona. No one would choose willingly to live in the middle of the desert where it's 120 degrees in the summer if they could live in San Diego. That's just something that human beings won't do, unless, of course, you chase them out. And many people who live in those states are people who used to live in California or would prefer to live in California, but don't because we're an insane asylum. And Gavin Newsom is the poster child of that insane asylum. They hate Californians in Nevada. You go to Nevada and you have a California license plate on your car, you're going to have an experience real fast. I cannot imagine those people looking at the poster child of California excess and saying, you know what, that's who we should put in charge of the country. Then you got Georgia and North Carolina. You think if Gavin Newsom walks into a Cracker Barrel in Georgia or North Carolina, they're not going to look at him like he's on drugs? And then you've got the Rust Belt, where you've got Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and maybe even Minnesota could be in play this next time around. I can't imagine those people looking at him and thinking, you know, he's one of us. No, he's not one of you. He looks like a stockbroker in the 1980s who spends way too much of the time in the bathroom powdering his nose.
I'm having a flashback to when he had a debate with DeSantis on Fox. I remember a point you made a while back on this show that the California Democrats are never tested. They never get a fastball or a curveball thrown at them because of the media. So they're always handled with kid gloves. So they're not ready for prime time. And we saw that with Kamala. And Newsom went up there with DeSantis, and it was a while ago, so I kind of forget. I remember DeSantis doing a really good job, or maybe winning. But is there any data that we can get from that that's still relevant today and this next run for Newsom?
He's smarter than Kamala, and he's quicker on his feet than Kamala. Don't forget, Gavin is severely dyslexic. So he has to memorize everything. He cannot read a teleprompter. He has a difficult time reading words in front of his face in any capacity. So he has a memory that is a steel trap. He can remember facts. He can remember figures. So even if he's saying something that doesn't make sense, he gives the appearance of looking like he is in command of what actually happened. And there's a certain number of people who will buy into that. So if you put him on a stage with J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or whoever it is that the Republicans nominate in 2028, he will have a better showing than Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. The problem is the substance of what he will be saying is just not there. There's no way you can spin the condition of the state of California and say that you presided over a success story, because that's just ultimately not true. What he will do was exactly what he did in the recall election and what he's going to try to do in the special election, which is take the focus off of his performance here and talk about big macro issues. Talk about Donald Trump. Talk about abortion. Talk about the Supreme Court. Talk about democracy. Talk about all things where you cannot look at him and say, okay, you have a record and the record says you failed on this. Because if you're talking about your philosophical attitudes about abortion, there's no metric where you can look at him and say, okay, you tried this and it failed. And that's where he's going to try to shift the debate.
Great. Last question. Let's take someone maybe you do admire, like a JD or a Marco, or someone who we think is effective and has a record. How do those two pair up against each other, do you think? What are the strengths that maybe the Republican candidates would have over Newsom?
Well, they would have a record to run on. You look at the stock market right now. You look at the condition of the border, how the border is now under control. You look at what they're doing internationally, stopping all of these conflicts across the globe. They have a record that they can run on. They have something that's concrete. Gavin Newsom doesn't have that. So you just have to keep shifting things back to, okay, Gavin can talk about what Gavin's going to talk about. Let's come back to planet Earth and talk about reality. And this is our record. This is what we did. He can't talk about reality because reality in California is chaos.
John Phillips Show, KABC. Follow John everywhere. John, where's your Twitter?
Johnny don't like.
John Phillips Show. Great to talk to you, John. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
John is the man. There's no better person to analyze the current state of California than John Phillips. He's just the best.